Well, good morning, everybody. This is Brian Zimmerman, digital content editor of Jazziz magazine, back with another episode of the Jazziz Daily Brunch. Thank you so much again for joining us. It's been awesome to have you along for this new journey for us. We'd love to see everybody tuning in on Facebook and YouTube. We certainly love to see you dropping us a line, saying hi to our guests, asking them questions. It's been awesome. It's been so heartwarming for us because it really makes us feel like we're connected. I'm super excited for today's guest. He is not only a personal friend of mine, but he happens to be a phenomenal, and I mean phenomenal, young musician. He can sing. He can play piano. He can play the trumpet. Can he dance, though? Perhaps we'll find out on this very show. He has a new album out right now called A Lot of Living to Do. Please welcome the very talented Benny Benack III.
Good morning.
Hey, in his bathroom, no less.
Good morning, everyone. Well, we said this is kind of a brunch. It's 11 a.m. for everybody, which for me, quarantine hours, 11 a.m. That's pretty early.
That's the
so I debated. Should I put on a suit? Should I get ready? And I said, no, you know what? I'm going to give them the real 11 a.m. experience.
This is a real.
This is what you get. Okay, this is it right here.
I love it, man. And you've got the coffee. I like that you brought the coffee to Jazz Brunch. Appreciate that. Now, let me ask you this. On the spectrum of coffee snob, where do you fall? Are you a hand ground, shade-grown Ethiopian in your Chemex, or do you throw a tablespoon of instant Maxwell House in microwave water?
That is a good question. And there are certainly some people in the jazz community that take their beans very seriously.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
As Larry David would say in the new season of Curb Your Enthusiasm, it's all about the beans. When Larry David opens up his coffee shop out of spite, his spite shop.
I haven't gotten there yet, man, but it's on my list. After Tiger King.
Yeah. Well, there's a very, there's a lot of good content out there TV
That's
wise.
right. That's right.
I have an espresso machine, so I splurged on the fancy coffee machine. But I'm very much a social creature, and when I'm home, I love to start my day by going to a coffee shop. Getting a bagel and cream cheese, and people watching in New York, and just sitting there. So that's actually one of the things that I miss.
That you miss. Well, look, I brought my Zabar's mug. Just
there it
is,
is,
man. That's for you. I know you're an uptown guy, aren't you?
I am. I'm in West Harlem, so
there you go.
Not too far.
There you go. Well, hey, man, I like to touch base with every musician I talk to during these times, just to see how things are going, how you're staying sane, what you've been doing aside from watching Curb Your Enthusiasm. How you staying? I was going to say positive, but
right.
Connotation, right? Exactly.
Well, no, it's funny that one of the things I did like the first couple days of the quarantine in New York, it just hit me. There was inspiration for a cover, and for people that maybe are familiar with my music or, have listened to the new album, one of the things I love to do is write vocals and kind of write lyrics. And there's an old standard from Charles Strauss, Bye Bye Birdie, Put on a Happy Face. And it was just like, as soon as they started talking about quarantine and, they were talking about everyone wearing masks, it just hit me. It was like, oh, put a mask on your face, like put on a happy face, put a mask on your face, so that was like, I had all this motivation and I had all this energy at the very beginning of the quarantine. And I said, well, I'm going to make a parody song and I'm going to change the lyrics and I'm going to, record myself and I'm going to play piano and I'm going to play trumpet like Nick Payton. I'm going to do it all at the same time and I'm going to sing and, I'm going to post it. And that was kind of like my first day of quarantine. I tried to put the song together and I really did kind of like do a one-man band. I was doing everything. And I just put it in the GarageBand on my computer. I didn't even know what the heck I was doing. I think I put my cell phone up on top of my, my steamer and I just sat it there and I said, okay, this will be my tripod, and let's do a little home studio. And, pun intended, that video kind of went viral.
Yes,
I ended up like on the local news in New York, and it was shared a bunch online and it was great. That was kind of my first foray into, you know, kind of putting out a lot of this homegrown content, and it showed me that there's an audience out there. There's a jazz audience that is sitting in their bathrobes, waiting for music to inspire them and, you know, get them through these times. So that kind of was the first couple days that happened, and since then I've just been thinking about different ways that I can, you know, come up with more music and, you know, go live and communicate with people. We have some people listening on Instagram right now.
Hey there, hello.
We're just trying to stay connected, you know.
We certainly are, man.
Each other through this.
That's right. Well, Benny, man, we saw that Put a Mask on Your Face video. We saw it. We put it on our site. We loved it. And I was wondering if right off the bat, man, maybe we could see how it was made, just a little smidge of Put a Mask on Your Face live live and in the flesh. Would that be cool, Benny?
Let's do it. Let's see what we can do here. I'm firing up the keyboard. How's that? Can you guys hear that?
Sounds beautiful.
Corona's gonna clear up. Put a mask on your face. Oh, I forgot the words. And cheer up. Put a mask on your face. This is the main part that I remember. Don't spread corona all over the place. Just put a mask on your happy face.
Yeah, baby. Love it, man.
If you know, it's just a teaser. If you want to actually hear the lyrics, you can go to the YouTube video. It's up there.
That's right. And you play horn and piano at the same time in that video.
I do. And that is, you know, I talked to Nicholas Payton for advice for that, because he's kind of the guy that has kind of popularized that and made it kind of, you know, a part of his musical presentation. And, you know, I asked him, when you're playing trumpet and you're playing piano at the same time, you know, what are you thinking about? Because, you know, the piano is in concert key.
Yeah. And
the trumpet is in B flat. So you're in two different keys. And basically he said, you know, because you can't be present for both at the same time. So he said he would really kind of muscle memory in the bass lines, and really feel like the bass and the chords are, you know, second nature, so that he's still able to be creative, you know, while he's playing trumpet.
It is impossibly hard. I cannot describe to the viewers how insanely hard this is. Yeah, so my only question to you before maybe you can riff a little bit, maybe on a blues or something, is how many brains do you have, and where do you keep the second one, man?
Oh man, it's just one. It's just one, believe me. And I don't know. It's, you know what? That's one thing I will say. I'm sure a lot of jazz musicians you've talked to, the one nice kind of thing, if there is such a thing about this quarantine, is we do have a lot of time to shed, a lot of time to practice. And for a lot of us that are, you know, usually running around, traveling, and just, you know, hustling just to, you know, to pay the bills, it's rare to have all this time to just kind of sit home and practice.
Yeah, there's Mr. Nick Payton. There he is, playing the keys and the trumpet at the same time. Now he has since kind of developed this unique system where he's got the trumpet on like a swiveling stand.
Right. So it's just up there, because I'll tell you, your arm gets tired if you're holding it up with one arm for, you know, an hour and a half concert. Heck yeah. Yeah, man.
Again, I just want to reiterate how insanely hard this is. You're thinking in two different keys. You've got the muscle memory going in the bass line. You're trying to improvise on top of it. So, you know, I hate to put you on the spot, Benny, but is there any way you can do a little keys and trumpet at the same time? Again, something easy, a blues, or something easy. Like, you know, like I could sit here and do it.
Let's try it. I've got a nice patch on the keyboard that actually will do bass and a ride cymbal.
Cool.
So Let's see. Let's see if I can do it.
All right, brother. Yeah, man. Very nice. As regular viewers of this show know, our video guy has to always take me off screen and mute me because I'm always like doing the stank face when we play a good lick, you know, and grunting. Yeah, man. So that was excellent, dude. Excellent.
We're working out the kinks. You know, I got another few weeks to go here.
No, I mean it's you're already so talented, and the fact that you can now do this just seems unfair. So anyways, hey man, let's talk about the new album because, you know, you played Put a Mask on Your Face was a satire, Put on a Happy Face from Bye Bye Birdie. The name of the new album is A Lot of Living to Do. It's a phenomenal album. And I'm not just saying that because you're my friend. It really was excellent. You know, I was kind of curious about the title track. I probably don't listen to nearly as much as you do, but have there been, you know, straight ahead jazz covers of A Lot of Living to Do that you were aware of before you set out to record this project?
Yeah, absolutely. For a lot of people, they're probably most familiar with the Sammy Davis version. So there is a kind of an iconic arrangement of Sammy Davis that, you know, I had performed before and certainly was in my mind. But the version that really inspired me is one that not a lot of people have heard, two actually. One of which is a singer by the name of Bill Henderson.
Oh, sure.
An album, Bill Henderson with the Oscar Peterson Trio. And as a matter of fact, Gravy Waltz is actually also covered on that.
Okay, you get another tune from the album that you did with Christian McBride.
Right, and Ray Brown wrote that tune. So I worked with Ulysses Owens Jr., who was playing drums. He also was the producer. And I actually showed Ulysses the recording of Bill Henderson, and he listened to that whole album. And it was Ulysses who actually said, hey, what about this tune Gravy Waltz? Like Mel Torme sings this. You should maybe do an arrangement of that with McBride. So that album was very influential. And then also there was a later Blue Note reissue, kind of like a Lost Sessions album of Lee Morgan's that's just entitled Standards. And it was one of these ones that was recorded and then they didn't, you know, they put it in the vault until later.
Okay.
But it's a great record. It's Ron, it's Herbie, it's Lee Morgan, James Spaulding, and they play A Lot of Living to Do. And it's like just a really straight ahead tipping, swinging version of it. And that stuck with me. So it was kind of a combination of those two because obviously we sing and I'm also, you know, playing trumpet on the track as well.
Yeah, and that's absolutely what I love about your playing is that it's, and you see people dropping lines here. They're saying hi to you, Benny.
Yeah, right.
What I love about your playing is you are so studied, you know, in jazz history and the classics, but at the same time, you are able to very subtly and very proficiently push the envelope, you know, harmonically. So listening to a Benny Benack track, you get that Sammy Davis Jr., you know, straight ahead, old school vibe, and also the Lee Morgan tipping harmonically advanced stuff, man. I love it. If at all possible, would we be able to hear a little? I don't know how much you could play right here of A Lot of Living to Do.
Yeah, absolutely. I might even remember more words to that song than my Corona parodies. Let me see what I got. There are girls just right for some kissing, and I mean to kiss me a few. Oh, those girls don't know what they're missing. I've got a lot of living to do. And there's wine all ready for tasting, and there's Cadillacs all shiny and new. Gotta move, 'cause time is a-wasting. I've got a lot of living to do. There's music to play, places to go, and people to see. Everything for you and me. Life's a ball, if only you'd know it. And it's all just waiting for you. You're alive, so come on and show it. There's such a lot of living to do. A lot of living to do. A lot of living to do. Such a lot of living to do. Oh.
Yeah, man. Yes. Thank you for that. Excellent. Excellent.
There you go. Had to get some trumpet in there too.
Nice. Well, your trumpet solo on this tune on the album is excellent.
Well, it's hard, you know, it's hard. I think you really have to screw up to not sound in the pocket when you're playing with Christian McBride, you know, in general. So basically all you have to do is put a sound out of your instrument and it's going to feel good because he's holding it down. So I was very lucky to have him on board for that album.
Oh yeah, and like we mentioned, Gravy Waltz, which is essentially just a duet between the two of you.
Yeah, it is. It's just a duo track. Yeah.
Yep. Very intimate. And yeah, Christian, really, you could sneeze on top of Christian McBride bass line and it would swing.
Well, it was funny when we went to do Gravy Waltz, you know, he didn't see any of the music beforehand. You know, he just showed up to the studio, consummate professional, sight read everything. But, you know, I told him we were going to do Gravy Waltz. And, you know, he even kind of said, he's like, oh man, I've never recorded this tune before. This is the first time Christian McBride's playing Gravy Waltz.
Oh, nice. Sprung one on Christian McBride.
Yeah, man.
That's hard. That's difficult. Right on. Well, hey, before we proceed any farther, I just want to say, maybe further, whichever. I just want to say, for those of you listening on or watching on Facebook, on YouTube, feel free to drop us a line, say hi, ask a question for Benny or for me. We can maybe get him to play piano, trumpet standing on his head. We can find out what else he's capable of, but please don't be shy. Go ahead and ask away. Benny was on the podcast, Jazz's podcast with me a few months ago, and we really talked about your trumpet influences. Mm-hmm. And again, coming from both sides of the spectrum, right? You have Roy Hargrove on the one hand, the Chet Baker on the other. I would love to delve more into your vocal influences, only because we're hearing you sing so much now. Right. You mentioned Mel Torme, and I can certainly hear the Velvet Fog in your voice. But who else was kind of on your radar as a budding vocalist?
Well, I mean, the one person that is kind of omnipresent for all of us, you know, anytime a guy throws on a suit and, you know, has a Jack Daniels in his hand, obviously Sinatra is going to come to mind. And, you know, I'm certainly not afraid of, you know, admitting that that was a large influence of mine, even though it has, you know, influenced so many. Mm-hmm. You know, I grew up on Sinatra. My mother's mother, my grandmother on my mom's side, my Mimi, as it were, she was like a Bobby Soxer. She was a huge Sinatra fan. So there were like Frank Sinatra albums on the coffee table at my grandparents' house, you know, pictures, portrait books, you know, the whole 9 yards. So of course I grew up, you know, with that influence. But it's funny because at the time that I was growing up, you know, I came to jazz music so early on in my life because my father's a sax player, my mom is a vocalist. So I was listening to jazz from the time I was 5 years old. And that was what I was passionate about. That's always what I loved. So while I was listening to Frank Sinatra, listening to Mel Torme, certainly Sammy Davis Jr., Nat Cole, Joe Williams, of course, all these great old recordings, I was also listening to jazz that was coming out at that time.
Right.
about Roy Hargrove, we talk about Christian McBride. You know, where does that put us? It's in the 90s. We're in the mid 90s. We're in the late 90s. You know, that's when I'm growing up with this music. And another guy that was putting out music during that time, you know, at a rapid rate and was really ascendant at that point in his career was Harry Connick Jr. And I never thought at the time that I was necessarily, oh, let me cop this Harry Connick Jr. thing. Let me figure out what he's doing here. It wasn't like I was, you know, kind of consciously absorbing him, as would be the case later on when I was really studying trumpet players and vocalists.
Right.
But it's funny because, you know, the people that we listen to, the influences we have when we're that young age are so influential. And the number one person that people come up to me almost every time I have a concert, somebody comes up to me at the end and is like, you really remind me of that Harry Connick Jr. guy. You really remind
High praise.
And I'm like, hey, he's a talented guy.
Yep.
He's handsome.
Yep.
He married a Victoria's Secret model. You know, I'd say I will take the comparison. I'm
totally
fine with that.
And I can see it. And you know, Harry's career, obviously something to aspire to. We also talked about in the podcast, something I'd love to revisit here, very talented musicians, you know, who also are great singers. And what, you know, it can be a tough road for them sometimes in terms of, from the record label side, marketability. You know, you think of guys like George Benson or Harry Connick Jr., you know, Grady Tate, all these guys, just phenomenal singers, could have also totally made it as musicians, you know, or as instrumentalists on their own. Was that ever a fork in the road for you?
You know, there was a time earlier in my career when I first was moving to New York, which now is, when I think about it, is crazy. It was 10 years ago. And I was very conscious to kind of really advertise myself as a trumpet player first and foremost, because I felt like that was, you know, that was my craft. That's what I spend hours every night practicing. And that was how I was going to, you know, that was going to be kind of how I was going to, my bread and butter, so to speak, how I was going to pay the bills. You know, that's my main tool. My main instrument, I always felt like, was my trumpet. And also I didn't want to kind of, you know, open Pandora's box and kind of be marketing myself as a singer where people might not take my trumpet playing as seriously because they say, oh, well, he's a singer and he plays some trumpet, or vice versa. He's a trumpet player and he sings, da, da, da. So, you know, consciously, I didn't sing a lot early on in my career as a band leader in New York. And in fact, you know, the main kind of sideman gigs that I hustled were primarily playing trumpet. And I wanted to kind of stake my claim, you know, and be kind of taken seriously as a trumpet player before, you know, ultimately introducing my audience and in the world to that other side. And, you know, when I did my first album, One of a Kind, which was maybe recorded in 2017, I want to say, at that point, me as a band leader, you know, I wasn't doing a lot of touring. I wasn't doing a lot of performing. And that was earlier on. You know, some of the songs I wrote on that album were the very first songs I wrote lyrics to, and I was trying to sing. And I think the time between that first album and this one, A Lot of Living to Do, the singing really became kind of an equal partner in my musical presentation. And I think you can, you know, I'm proud of this new album that you can hear a lot of growth there vocally. I mean, of course, on the trumpet, but also, you know, your voice is an instrument too. And the only way that you improve that instrument is if you're, you know, working that muscle. So I've, you know, once I finally let the cat out of the bag, you know, and then I was off to the races, and now I'm singing all the time. And I really have come to appreciate it as like I said, an equal partner as the trumpet.
Yeah. And I mean, we love your voice too. I've seen the growth from the last album to this one. Also your growth as an arranger. You know, there are some very nice covers on this album. We already talked about A Lot of Living to Do. We got a Burt Bacharach tune, What the World Needs Now, on there. And you've got, you can undoubtedly hear my children crying in the background because Mickey Mouse Clubhouse must have turned off or something. But one of the tunes that my youngest daughter fell in love with was Won't You Be My Neighbor?
Oh, yeah.
from the cover of the Mr. Rogers tune. Talk to me a little bit about that one. Mr. Rogers, Fred Rogers, was a huge fan of jazz and a jazz aficionado. I remember he was one of the first people to have Wynton Marsalis on TV. And his piano player, what was it, Joe?
So Joe Negri was the guitarist.
The guitarist.
And the pianist was Johnny Costa.
Johnny Costa, right. So musically, that show was fantastic. Why decision to cover that tune?
Well, people in Pittsburgh know very well the story of
yeah, we should mention Benny Benack, Pittsburgh native.
That's right.
Proud Pittsburgh native.
That's right. If I turn the cameras around, you'd see, my bedroom looks like a college dorm. I have giant posters of Ben Roethlisberger and, Sidney Crosby and all these guys in my overgrown man cave that I have here in Harlem. I grew up in Pittsburgh. Fred Rogers was a Pittsburgher. Mr. Rogers was filmed. WQED Studios was in Pittsburgh. And my grandfather, Benny Benack Sr., was a very prominent band leader, trumpet player at that time. And there's an episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood where Fred Rogers goes to a music store and gets a trumpet lesson. And my grandfather is playing. And he plays and they play a couple classical pieces. And they also play a Fred Rogers tune that I recently covered. I put out that video on YouTube. It was one of the last recording sessions I had before the quarantine. And it's a Fred Rogers tune called Everybody Has a History. And, I realized going through some of the kind of the Fred Rogers songbook, so to speak, you can tell that he must have been a jazz fan because a lot of these songs sound like jazz standards that, could have been written by Rogers and Hart or
totally.
But, the only difference is that a lot of times the lyrics are kind of like, children's show lyrics. So you'll have these like really sophisticated, beautiful, deep melodies. And then you have like a very kind of simple message through a lyric, and something that is relatable to everybody. So I loved his music. There's obviously a connection there with my family. And I've also gotten the opportunity to play with Joe Negri, who fans of the show will recognize him as Handyman Negri.
Right.
He's 92 years old, still with us, still performing in Pittsburgh to this day. And, I got his blessing to do some of that music, which was great. And we did the theme to Mr. Rogers. I couldn't have predicted that Tom Hanks was going to put out a movie the same time the album came out. That didn't hurt. Certainly. And there's a great Netflix documentary on Fred Rogers. If anybody's looking for something after you finish Tiger King, you can check that out. And the other tune that we cover on the album, It's You I Like, is another Fred Rogers tune that's a beautiful ballad. And I actually discovered that song from the episode of Wynton on the show.
There you go. Right.
Wynton Marsalis comes on the show, performs that song with the band, the house band for the show. And it's a beautiful tune. And I went and, looked it up and recorded it on the album. And I actually saw when Ellis Marsalis passed away just last week, a couple folks reposted. There was another episode of Mr. Rogers where the whole Marsalis family went on the show. Have you seen that one?
I have not, but I'll have to check that out because we watch a lot of Mr. Rogers in this house.
Play another one of Fred Rogers' tunes. And actually, it's Branford and it's Wynton and Delfeo on trombone, and Jason Marsalis is like 8 years old. He's like he's a child playing
swinging. I'm sure.
Oh yeah. So
cool,
that's on YouTube too. You can find that.
We will check it out. All right, can we hear either one of those tunes, Benny? Would that be cool? Just a little smidge.
Of course. Well, I'll do a little bit of It's You I Like because I
love that
duo with piano. Yep. So we'll see how much of the great Takeshi Obayashi is on the album. I'll try and rip off some of what he played. It's you I like. It's not the things you wear. It's not the way you do your hair, but it's you I like. The way you are right now, the way deep down inside you, not the things that hide you, not your toys, they're there just beside you. But it's you I like, every part of you, your eyes, your ears, your feelings, whether old or new. I hope that you'll remember, even when you're feeling blue. Oh, it's you I like, it's you yourself, it's you. It's you I like.
Yeah, man. Love it.
Beautiful.
Love the melody. I love your interpretation of it. Just gorgeous, man.
It reminds me a lot of "I'll Be Seeing You." You know,
Yeah,
so
a little bit.
Hear that jazz influence. Da, 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 even when the storm is due. You know, it's like the same kind of tune, basically.
Absolutely, man. I love it. And you know, like I say, you're so studied in this stuff. I was hoping we could do a little experiment toward the end here with your trumpet, because what I love about your trumpet playing is you've got such a strong command. There it is. There's the horn.
There we go.
It's like the gold mouthpiece.
That's right.
Yeah, nice.
That's right, folks.
That's a professional. You're so studied in the jazz vernacular. You know, you've got it down. You are totally immersed in that dialect. But like I mentioned, you have the ability to very subtly push the envelope harmonically, get challenging, take things out, so to speak. You know, jazz musicians talk about playing in and playing out, playing very much within the chord changes and then kind of coloring outside the lines. So I was wondering if we could do a little bit of pop jazz theory here, Benny.
Okay.
I wonder if we could take a very simple chord progression,
Right.
some like rhythm changes. I've got you under my skin. It will play a little bit of the melody. Then we'll have you take a ride through a little bit, totally inside the lines. And then maybe the second time through, we get out a little bit. We start doing some subs, just so people can hear, you know, this is what it sounds like when a player's inside. This is what it sounds like when a player's out, and how, you know, masters of their craft kind of interweave the two.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, I hope none of my old professors from the Manhattan School of Music are watching and judging too harshly, but we'll give it a shot.
Let's do it, man.
Okay, so I guess we'll do a little bit of rhythm changes because you threw that out there. That's always a good place to start. And you know, for me, when I think harmonically speaking, based on kind of what kind of palette, where on the scale I want to be, I usually am thinking of my influences. So, for example, if I'm playing rhythm changes and I want to be playing really kind of inside that the bebop sound, really kind of, you know, right down Broadway, so to speak, harmonically, I will kind of go into my bag of tricks that says, okay, Lee Morgan, Blue Mitchell, Freddie Hubbard, Clifford Brown, you know, and kind of I will access kind of their language. And so, you know, we're very much in that hard bop, you know, bebop influence. And let's see how in I can be here. There you go. That's a little bit,
man.
That's one chorus of, you know.
I got rhythm. You know the tune, folks.
That's right.
Yeah, very much hear that. I mean, like I said, such a strong command of that dialect, that style. Now, if we were to push that out of bounds a little bit, you know, get a little squirrely with it.
Right.
Who are you looking to at that point?
Well, for me, you know, generally when I start to think of outside harmony, you know, I was very lucky in middle school and high school growing up in Pittsburgh. Sean Jones was teaching.
Oh, yeah, man.
at a college there with a great jazz program. And Sean was the first person that introduced me to Woody Shaw. And Woody Shaw is known, of course, as a great innovator of trumpet vocabulary. You know, Woody was around when Freddie Hubbard and these guys were had already made their mark. And Woody pushed the envelope further harmonically a little bit. But also, you know, for me, when I think outside of the harmony, I think of chromaticism. And of course, you think of everything Miles Davis was doing with the second quintet. And certainly another, we already mentioned Ellis Marsalis, another one of our jazz luminaries that we lost here, you know, in the past week or so, the great Wallace Roney.
Yeah.
I mean, Wallace Roney was an absolute master of chromaticism. And, you know, he kind of took what Miles was doing and fleshed that out, you know, even another step. So for me, immediately when I think I want to play outside the harmony, I'm thinking less in terms of, you know, B flat major, B diminished 7, C minor, D flat diminished 7. And I'm really just kind of thinking, you know, like it's a piano, I'm just saying all the black notes, all the white notes, everything is in play, you know. And I got great advice from Scott Wenholt, the wonderful trumpet player in the Vanguard Jazz Orchestra and put out many of his own records over the years. He was one of my teachers at Manhattan School. And he would always implore me in these lessons, you know, we'd put on Aebersolds, we'd play together. And he would say, you sound too perfect. Everything is, you know, it's too neat. It's too nice. You know, everything lands exactly where it's supposed to. You need to get some grit in there. And he would consciously make me play chromatically and play out of the harmony and trust my ear to always come back in. So that's something that I've had to become more comfortable with. And especially when you play with other musicians, when you play with the rhythm section and there's a pianist there, you have to have that faith that if you kind of jump off the deep end, the pianist is going to be there to ground you, to help catch you, to break your fall. You know, it's like a trust fall. You see that on like Instagram, right? And, you know, we think of what Herbie did with Miles. Miles basically knew he had the freedom to play any note,
right?
You know, and Herbie would voice it in such a way that he would have his back. So, you know, for me, I think chromatically more so than anything else when I play. And let's do a chorus.
Let's take one out in the deep end, man.
All right. Okay. Oh
yeah. Yeah.
Where's the drum? I'm like Kenny Garrett. I want like a little like duo drums and horn. Let's go.
Right? That was fire, man.
Wait, look, Brian, I've got the drummer right here on my keyboard. I should have been playing duo the whole time. Check it out. 1, 2, 3, 4.
There it is.
I got the whole band here with me.
No, I love that, man. I really did. And thank you for walking us through that. You know, some people are afraid to get too technical, but I think if we can share with our viewers, with our readers, just a little bit of insight on what's going on, you know, on the bandstand, it's so helpful. You know, so many times you go to a gig, you know, and the band is really burning and the horn player will play a lick and the other musicians, the audience go, woo, you know, they make the stank face. They give you the right. And the casual listener might not know why, might not know what's going on. And it's stuff like this, you know, you're explaining the trust falls, that the piano has to be so open to what everyone is doing, you know, following soloists in and out of the chords. It's incredible. And it takes place in a second, you know, in real time. But if you understand what's going on, it unlocks so many doors. So thank you, man, for walking us through that. That was very cool.
A lot of times, that's, for example, that was the same song, Rhythm Changes, and I played in 2 very different ways.
Right.
And a lot of times, you know, if you're sitting in, if you're at a jam session in New York, as a horn player, you're at the mercy of your rhythm section. So if I show up and the piano player is very, you know, clearly stating that he is coming out of, you know, classic comping, you're hearing Bud Powell, you're hearing Horace Silver, you know, you're hearing Hank Jones, kind of like classic harmony. I'm going to kind of go in that direction to fit in with what the rhythm section is doing. If you have a drummer that's playing, that's just playing Philly Joe the time versus someone that is, playing Jeff Tain Watts and, kind of going in a different direction. Oftentimes as a horn player, I'm at the mercy of the rhythm section. So if they're playing in a very, standard bebop way, and I'm coming in with all this abstract out harmony, that's going to clash. Right. And vice versa. If the soloist is, coming up there and it's a saxophone player that's just playing Bird, but the rhythm section is, playing
another planet,
Coleman or, Eric Dolphy, you're going to have a clash there. So I really try and fit into whatever the musical setting, whatever the landscape is when I enter. That's what I try and fit into.
As the best musicians do, brother. Well, Benny, the new album is out right now. If people want to listen to it, if people want to find out more, what's the best place to follow along all things Benny Benack?
Well, my website is bennybenackjazz.com, and I usually say, hey, that's where I post all my gigs, and you can see where to find me. These days, not a lot of gigs to speak of, but certainly my day-to-day, I'm putting out a lot of content on my Instagram all the time, which is at BBJazz III, Benny Benack III, basically. And, that is where you can kind of see, me slowly losing my mind over the ensuing days and weeks of this quarantine. But, I am putting out a lot of music. I just put out a cover yesterday of a tune called The Quarantine Blues with a great young jazz vocalist from Spain. So she recorded her vocals in her bedroom in Spain. Her name's Mar Villaseca. And, we just did a little blues about being stuck inside a quarantine. And we had the drummer, Joe Perry, fly in his drums from New Jersey where he's holed up with his family. And we spliced everyone together. So, we're finding ways to keep the music alive during this crazy, crazy time.
That is so great, man. Yeah, I don't know how you New York cats do it. I'm down here in South Florida. We can still go to the grocery store. I can stock up on all my goods and keep them in my pantry and in my fridge. What do you guys? Are you just like wiping down seamless deliveries every day, or?
Well, I think people see it in the news. For weeks now, we've heard New York is the outbreak. New York is the epicenter. New York, New York, New York. So, all of my parents' friends and family, people are texting me, we're so worried about you. You're in New York. You're in the eye of the hurricane, speaking of,
we're quite familiar with those. Yeah.
Guys, right. But I just keep telling them, as long as you're living somewhere where it's shelter in place, you're just sitting inside your apartment. It's going to be the same experience, whether you're in New York or you're in, Florida or wherever. I mean, I'm in my apartment. I'm not really going outside. The times that I do go out are to get groceries, and the grocery stores are open. The restaurants are open for takeout. I go outside for exercise. You keep keep your social distancing.
That's right.
But, I do that, and I did break my quarantine last week just to go down the street to play with Emmett, who I know you spoke with him last
That's right.
week.
He was on the show. Yep.
And, Emmett Cohen, brilliant pianist, one of my best friends. He lives like literally down the street. So I was minimum exposure. I made it over to his place.
Good on you.
And, just passing the time.
That's exactly it, man. You look good. I'm glad you're exercising. I have stress eating everything in my house at this point.
I'm learning to cook. That's a new thing.
Yes.
Quarantine has made me learn how to cook.
Baking. We've all. I ate, I think, a half a gallon of goldfish yesterday.
Oh man, I have goldfish every night. Me too. That's
very
on my
nice
list for sure.
Benny, you've also got another live stream coming up next week that we want to let people know about.
Yeah, I'm doing a live stream on Instagram with the Django. So any New York jazz fans, one of our great clubs in Tribeca, basement of the Roxy Hotel. That actually was the last gig that I played before the quarantine. I played a Saturday night show at the Django, and the following Monday was the first day of everything being shut down in New York. And, a lot of these clubs, a lot of these pages and jazz, partners of the jazz community, everyone's sitting at home, sitting on their hands waiting for what they can do. So it's been really cool to see, you guys have taken the mantle and stepped up and been featuring a couple live stream performances, as well as a lot of these venues, a lot of festivals, kind of co-hosting and curating these online streaming concerts. So the Django, they're throwing their hat into the ring. They're going to be doing a bunch of concerts, and I'm going to be kind of releasing a quarantine playlist of some things that I've been listening to. And, you can, again, that's probably just for the Instagram crowd. You can catch me there. That's next Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern time. So, I got another handful of days, another week or so to come up with my repertoire, maybe memorize the words to my my mask song.
Well, like we mentioned, it's up. It's on your Facebook page. It's on our site. People should definitely go check it out.
Well,
and I cannot recommend your new album, A Lot of Living to Do, enough. Seriously, everyone listening, after this ends, go check it out. It's beautiful. Benny, this has been great, man. I always love catching up with you, and especially when you're in your bathrobe. You are such a talented dude. Like I mentioned up top, you can sing, you could play the horn, you could play the keys. It would almost be unfair if you were a good dancer too. So I hope that's not the case.
Well, hey, we did say YouTube. If somebody were to look up the Upper St. Clair Singing in the Rain High School Musical 2008, there might be someone there doing a pretty mean Gene Kelly tap.
Soft shoe. It's not fair, Benny. It's not fair.
You gotta find it on YouTube. I'm not going to give him the link, but there is footage. I do tap a little bit.
Well, we will dig that up and we will use it as blackmail, friend.
There you go.
Benny, thank you so much for joining me for brunch today. Really appreciate it, guys.
I appreciate it, man. And hopefully next time we talk, we can talk trash about baseball and there's some sports going on.
Well, I was going to say the good news coming out of this is that with no baseball season, the Pittsburgh Pirates can't lose.
Yeah, everybody is like, they don't want the season to start in Pittsburgh because they can be like, on April 1st, the Pirates will be in first place.
Undefeated. That's right, man. Benny, thank you so much. Pleasure checking in with you again. And ladies and gentlemen watching, again, we love seeing you. We saw people saying hi to Benny from all over the world. Please continue to do that. We'll be back tomorrow with Jay Beckenstein of Spyro Gyra. If you have questions, if you have comments, yeah, man. So Benny will be tuning in, that's for sure. If you have questions, if you have comments.
11 a.m. Eastern every day. That's
11
what 11
a.m. Eastern every weekday. That's right.
Nice.
Man. We're trying to bring that content. So, who doesn't love a jazz brunch, Benny?
Hey, man. Well, I'll probably be watching from bed because I usually don't wake up till about 1 p.m. these days. But for you, I will get out of bed early.
Oh, thank you, sir. I hope you don't change that bathrobe. Not for anything. Benny Benack III, thanks again. Really appreciate it, man.
Cheers.
Be safe. Be well. So long.